Welcome everyone to the 11th annual Lessons from Leading Women Tech Entrepreneurs event that WiTT is presenting. I'm Audrey Mandela. I'm the chair of WiTT. As I mentioned earlier, for some of you, there are also three other members of the WiTT board with us tonight: Annette Nabavi, Yasmin Majid, and our founder, Stephanie Liston. I'd also like to welcome those who haven't attended a WiTT event before, and of course, WiTT members and friends, and the three fantastic women entrepreneurs that we have speaking to you tonight. So as I mentioned, please turn off your cameras and mute if you are not speaking, but you can turn the cameras back on and unmute when we have the Q&A session. As we are recording tonight's panel, and we'll be posting the discussion to the WiTT YouTube channel. If you prefer to not be part of the recording, just keep your camera off for the entire time. We generally have this event, we always have this event in November around Global Entrepreneurship Week, which was last week. We see it as an excellent opportunity to celebrate and spotlight women entrepreneurs in our sector. And tonight we have three phenomenal women entrepreneurs in the tech space. We have Zarja Cibej, founder and CEO of myTamarin, which is London's leading nanny provider. Hannah Dawson, co-founder and CEO of Futrli, which uses a company's financial data to support business decision-making. And Rose Hulse, founder and CEO at ScreenHits TV, which enables users to see all their favorite streaming channels in one place and on the go. So I'd like to start the discussion by asking all of you if you could tell us a bit about yourselves and your businesses and what inspired you to become entrepreneurs. So why don't we go alphabetically by first name? So starting with Hannah, then Rose, and then Zarja.
Hi, hello everybody, how are we? So my background, I guess, we create financial prediction forecasting technology for small businesses, and I did the very dramatic thing of trying to solve my own pain, I guess. My background was hospitality, not tech in any stretch, by any stretch of the imagination, and bought a pub in Devon, as you do when you're 26. I'd created a forecast. We got bank funding, when banks used to give small businesses money, and in the first 6 months I didn't forecast VAT properly and nearly lost the business, which was possibly one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. The brown envelope landing on the doormat and £40,000 needing to be found from the back of the sofa somewhere. We lived above the premises. It was going through renovation to turn it into a gastropub. It was really just a very dramatic, awful time. I luckily had parents who could bail me out, but not every small business owner is, lucky enough to have that avenue. I have paid them back, just in case anybody's wondering. But that kind of spurred the idea that, back in the day, I had desktop accounting software. The cloud, this is in 2003, so I'm sure you can all remember that dial-up sound that we used to have. The cloud accounting technology wasn't there at the time. Fast forward a few years, and I've come out of the pub and have moved into, I was going to consult in hospitality, and then kind of realized that there was this gap in the marketplace for a past, present, future view of a small business's data. You would be bound by time lag, you would be bound by, waiting for historicals to month-end processes to be finished. Really turned into a bit of a forecasting geek when I was in the pub, because I never wanted that to happen again. So taught myself, went to the library, those things that we don't use anymore because we use Google instead, but went to the library, taught myself management accounting, which is quite extreme, but I was determined never to be in that situation again. Xero then came into the UK marketplace. QuickBooks Online obviously had been on the go for, and there's a lot of Americans on the call tonight, so I know QBO had been on the go for some time, but Xero really came in with a breath of fresh air and just transform the ability to get real-time information out of your business. And so, great leap of imagination. Well, what if we could turn that into something that was actually an operational tool for SMEs to help them survive? Because, whichever locale that you live in, 50% plus are failing by year 5. And it's not because they're all crappy ideas, right? because often there's something that bites them in the ass, or the planning side of things. There's no good factored by the accountants / advisors who should be training them at the beginning. There's no, business theory test like you do when you have to start learning how to drive a car. You do a theory test, don't you, before you get behind the wheel? Well, there really should be something like that for small businesses, but there isn't. And so Futrli was born. It was crunch boards back in the day. The plan then was just to really get this view of this, historical, current, and future. So really integrating reporting, dashboarding, and forecasting into one place rather than having them in siloed data sets. We launched in Australia. Why did we do that? Because I'm mental, clearly, and I can talk to that this evening if that's something that people want to talk to. But we launched in Australia because that was the most voracious. That was the place where this appetite for cloud accounting and its peripheral, ecosystem add-ons resided. So, but when we did, we realized that accountants quite liked what we did. Why did they? Well, those that deliver advisory services, as they term them, realized that there was an opportunity for them to help their SMEs also generate more profits from away from compliance work. And so our kind of future path was born. So we have a team in Australia, we have a team here. We've supported over 100,000 SMEs over the last 7 years in their decision-making processes, getting funding, etc. And we have a suite of cloud accounting integrations. But through the last kind of about 4 years ago now, so what we realized over the kind of over a 3-4 year period is that even accountants, as much as they have this great will in the world to offer advisory services, they were still only doing it for about 10% of their SME portfolio. And so it's 90% of SMEs were still going without any help at all, apart from the compliance work that keeps them out of jail. So we started the kind of R&D process to create a prediction forecasting technology that would analyze the data within the SMEs cloud accounting stack, and create accurate financial forecasts from it. Easier said than done. Lots of research and development thrown in the bin, including things, machine learning off the shelf, those sorts of things, because small business data, while often as complex as larger businesses, it's also irregular, lumpy. There's lots of, there are seasonal fluctuations. Just because you're this type of business doesn't mean that you're the same as that type of business, because you could be a completely different locale, have different employee sizing. So it took a year and a half longer than we wanted it to. Should have taken a year and a half, took 3 years. But we launched our Predict product into the marketplace at the beginning of this year to the SME marketplace, to the accounting marketplace, and it's going great guns. Our next step is for larger financial institutions to create a really frictionless process, bank approved, so that underwriting processes are faster, that we can get SMEs access to cash, credit, and capital. And yeah, that's Futrli. That's what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Fantastic. And I can think of quite a few SMEs and startups that can use those services. So interesting. Thank you, Hannah. Rose, would you like to go next? How did you get the entrepreneurial bug? And tell us about ScreenHits.
Well, yes, I never wanted to be an entrepreneur, actually. I never wanted to stress. I think I probably wanted to be a senior executive, but never a president of a company, because I just knew from a very young age that burden, that stress, that responsibility was just too much, that I didn't want it. So it wasn't something that I actually went out for. And when I was quite young, like around 19, 20, and I was looking at different professions, the last thing I ever wanted to do was to do sales, which is something that you actually need if you're starting a business. So it's kind of ironic and funny that I've ended up in, with my own business and in sales. So I ended up working for a lot of companies at really like big name brands and learning from some of the best. But for me, I just kind of felt that my wings were getting clipped, because I felt that the harder that I worked or the stronger that I was, it actually had a adverse effect. It didn't have the effect that I wanted it to have. And I just didn't feel that I was really being groomed for senior positions. So anyway, I kind of moved through my life and my career and took a break in the early 2000s, around 2005, 6, went to Argentina with, to study for my MBA, but ended up staying 2 years, didn't really know what I was going to do, found myself kind of back in media, and started working in production distribution and selling content and film shows. And this was around the time when Netflix was coming out, and there was YouTube and Vimeo, but the B2B side of selling content was very archaic. They were still putting a DVD in a FedEx box and shipping it overseas, and you'd have to wait 6 weeks to see if they received it, if it got stuck in customs. And this is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and I just felt that the whole process could be a bit better. And I just kind of parked that idea. And then I moved to New York. And I think there was one night that I kind of just had this really strong idea of exactly what that business would be, which would be to, kind of create this B2B marketplace. And I wrote it all down in like a very nice 5-page brief. And I parked it aside. I ended up working for a company, and they offered me that executive vice president role to kind of run a company, but not have 100% responsibility. But that just didn't really feel right for me. And this was before marriage and kids. And I was in my 30s living in New York. And I felt that that was probably the right time in my life, because I couldn't find the job that I wanted that was going to give me something that I needed. And I had a friend one day who was quite successful, that owned a very successful business, that said, well, don't you have an idea of something that you would ever want to do? And I said, oh, I had this one idea once, but maybe I didn't believe in myself enough, but I just kind of, he said, no, tell me what the idea was. And he goes, that's a really brilliant idea. Why wouldn't you go for that? And why is nobody already doing that? And I said, well, I don't even know where to start. I mean, where do I start to build this huge marketplace where the big studios give me their entire content libraries for me to sell it online, and kind of disrupt an entire engine of sales agents globally around the world? And he said, oh, I'm sure you can do it, and you can raise money for an idea like this. And, it was all very new for me, because I thought, oh, okay, well, how do I raise money? Because even though I got a degree in business, I can't remember ever having a course on fundraising or investment. It was a lot of accounting, a lot of economics, a lot of statistics, but never a class on how to raise funds. And so my friend, who was working at BlackRock at the time, said, I'll help you. We'll put together a really strong business plan and financial forecasts. And I was very fortunate to have that around me at the time. And I basically decided to quit my job, take the plunge, and create this marketplace. And I wanted to kind of eliminate all my plan Bs, because I knew staying in the United States, when things got hard, which they always do, I would just probably go back and get a job. And so I picked up and moved to a foreign country to start it there.
Fantastic. And how are things going?
Things are going well after 9 years. So when I started it, the industry was quite defensive about it, because it did disrupt their livelihood. And I saw things that were going to happen before, I guess, they saw them. When I had ScreenHits created, it was still very much an industry. People would spend millions of dollars to go to markets like the Cannes Film Festival and Sundance and MIPCOM. And it was a whole cultural experience. And ScreenHits was never meant to eliminate that, but really to be an add-on to kind of focus on the territories where they couldn't afford to have a sales team. In any case, so during those first few years, we really had to, pound the pavement and convince people that this isn't going to actually eliminate your job. It's going to make it better. Give us a chance. And, we kind of worked for free, I would say, for a number of years, because I really wanted to get people on board, to show them that the product worked. And we said, we won't even take commission on the first deal. Just come onto the platform and see. And I remember one of those deals was with Hasbro, and there was over 100 episodes that were sold to 3 channels in 3 territories. And I couldn't believe I gave that away for free, but it kind of helped to propel the company. And we ended up working with big brands like BBC and IMG and Warner Media. And then we started to white label, and that was going great. But then a few years ago, we noticed that people were not really using our platform. And I kind of went into a panic, because it was 6 years. We were doing okay on the revenue, about $600,000 to $1 million a year, but it wasn't this unicorn. It wasn't this explosion that I had hoped for. And then I started to notice that the people were not using our platform in the same way. And when I reached out to people to ask what's going on, what has been the change, they started to tell me, well, from really high up, we've been advised that we're not going to be selling our rights anymore internationally. So our goal is to actually get our TV rights back and our film rights back, because we're going to create our own direct-to-consumer streaming platform. And we started hearing this from Disney and Peacock, which is NBC Universal, HBO Max with Warner. So we knew 2 years ago that some of the biggest paid TV operators were going to lose some major channels. They were going to lose sporting rights, and that the buying and selling of TV content was going to change drastically. And that was our bread and butter. That was our lifeline. And I thought, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? I've taken all this investment. I have this huge vision. We've built this amazing technology. I just can't close the door on that because the industry is changing. So I thought, how can we adapt and grow with the industry and change with the industry and be versatile and use our technology in this new world? And so about 18 months ago, or a little bit over 18 months ago, I decided to create a B2B2C. So we still kept all of the customers we grew in those first 6-7 years. And we worked with them in a different way, because we knew that the consumer was going to be overwhelmed with having Netflix and Disney and Amazon and Stars and all these streaming services. Where are they going to go to find something? Yesterday, they were watching Friends on Netflix. Tomorrow, it's where? No one knows. And so we had developed an aggregator for content, although it was for B2B. So I quickly went to some people on my board and I said, what do you think of this idea? And some said, you're crazy. I mean, you want to basically become the aggregator and compete with like Samsung and Google and Apple? Like, in what world do you live in? You're going to need hundreds of millions to do that. And how would you even get Netflix to join your platform? And I said, yeah, but I don't think that there's an option actually. So we have to try to make this work. And so we went to our partners at Lionsgate and Stars and Disney, and they loved the idea. And they loved it in a way that I never had seen when I first started my company in 2012. They were so excited, and they were so focused on creating their own consumer product, but they also wanted to make sure that their content was top of mind with that consumer at the point of discovery, versus them always going to just one thing. And what we created was an aggregator that has like an EPG, like a TV guide of your Netflix, Amazon, Disney, Stars, ATP tennis, whatever it may be, but it's your own channel guide. And then you can search for whatever you want across all your platforms, see what's trending, press play, and it plays, it opens up the video. And it was incredible, because all of a sudden we became this hub of premium streamers. And now we work with the largest in the industry. Bloomberg News, like Bloomberg TV, called us, said, how do we get on your platform? And all the major streamers are there. So it's been a really amazing journey. And from a revenue standpoint, we were going from, like I said, $500,000 to $1 million a year. And within our first 18 months of having ScreenHits, we just closed a deal that's going to give us 10 million pounds in 1 year. So it's incredible how this change and this pivot was exactly what I needed. And I think many people, they panic at a moment of, oh, it's not working. It hasn't worked. It's failed. I can't raise the funding. I can't get the customers. But actually, even if you don't understand what's going on, that journey that you've been on has helped to either teach you certain lessons or create a product that would be used for a better reason later. And so that's my journey.
Yeah. And that's fantastic. That's very different from when I first met you, when you were pitching the original business. So that's wonderful. That's a big plus with your pivot. And we'll talk about that a little more later. So Zarja, would you like to tell us about myTamarin and tell everyone what a tamarin is?
Thank you, Audrey. So tamarins are monkeys who parent in family groups to help each other out when their babies are small. And for all of you who have children, you probably have heard of the saying, it takes a village to raise a child. And I think it takes a massive village to raise a child, but we've lost that village in the traditional sense, given how we live in global lifestyles. And so we want to create a modern village for modern parents. And it all started when I had my own children. I was a management consultant. I worked at BCG, loved my job. And of course, to go back to work, I needed to sort out childcare. And I realized at that point that childcare was very broken, very archaic, very underserved. It took me months to get it sorted, but I did, and I didn't think about it because I was happy to be back at work. And then 2 years later, I had another child and realized two things. One, nothing's changed. No one's investing in childcare. There's no progress. There's no innovation. And two, all my friends with children are having exactly the same problems. And that was at a time where we as a society really care about promoting women into senior positions and closing the gender pay gap. And I've come to understand that childcare is the ultimate gender equalizer at work. And so if childcare doesn't work, we're never going to close that gender pay gap. And so that's how myTamarin was born, or that's how my entrepreneurial journey has started. We are a platform. We call it a parent care platform, although our product at the moment is mostly around childcare. We say we look after parents because we believe that if parents are okay, parents are looked after, their children are going to be as well. We started as a purely B2C company, but then with the help of the pandemic, we've expanded into an employee benefit. So it's a B2B2C provider, which has been a really interesting journey and sort of a really welcome change. And one of the positive effects that the pandemic has had on our business, but I think also it can have more broadly on the society if we're going to see that forward momentum when employers really care about those employees who have children.
Thank you. Yes, so in fact, my next question is challenges that you've faced. And I'm imagining that you've all experienced COVID in different ways for your business. Sorry, I'm thinking that although fewer people were going to the office, they probably still needed some space with their children. So tell us about the COVID experience and also other challenges that you've had.
Yeah, so I mean, as any other business, as soon as the lockdown hit in the UK, we were kind of dead for a couple of weeks. But then, as you would expect, parents could only handle their work without childcare for so long. So about a month in, the growth kind of exploded, went back to normal and above that, because one thing became really, really clear, and that's, you can work in very flexible ways, and employers have gone and offered unprecedented levels of flexibility. But the reality is, if you have small children, they are a 24/7 job. There are 3 shifts in a row without a break, not for a day, but for weeks or months. And so regardless of how flexible you can work, you will still need childcare in order to be able to stay mentally healthy and also productive at work. And so that has, as much as it has intensified challenges for working parents, it has also increased empathy for working parents, the understanding of the challenges that they face, which in turn for us opened the doors to those corporates, progressive corporates, who really care about their employees, who care about diversity and inclusion, and who want to help their employees who have childcare challenges or any other sort of family-related challenges. And so in a way, pandemic was both a challenge, but then also it opened up a massive opportunity for us. So I guess the lesson there is, no matter what is thrown at you, try to look at it from the positive side. There's almost always something positive that you can turn into an opportunity.
Right. Well, and Rose, I'm guessing that since more people were streaming during COVID, that probably turned into a positive for you as well. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that in life, things do kind of happen all at once. And, we came up with this idea before COVID hit, and then it hit. And then 7 or 8 months in, there was a lockdown and people couldn't leave their house. And so they were at home watching TV, realizing there was nothing they wanted to watch on Sky. All the trending shows that were going around were on streamers like Netflix or Amazon or Apple Plus. So that was great. So we really realized that for us, we launched at the right moment because timing is everything, but also for the industry, because a lot of companies that weren't planning to have their own direct-to-consumer app for a number of years had sped that up, immediately. And people launched way before they were ready. I mean, they had like probably a 3-year window and they launched in 3 to 6 months. And so this put a lot of pressure on the industry. Well, what's going to happen now, and how will consumers find all this content, and how will the subscriptions work? So we kind of got thrown into the spotlight as being one of the first aggregators, because I made a decision early on that we should go to press with this to kind of start addressing some of the consumer fragmentation, and we were one of the leaders in that space, or the original people in that space. So that worked really well for us. And even though we did not launch during the first COVID, because there was more important things in the world than for us to kind of take advantage of that moment, we did get messaging out there. We did try to help people find things to watch and to build that relationship and to slowly start getting our name out there. And we've been activating and converting a lot of those people. We had over 1 million people kind of come and look at the platform and register their interest with us. We now started converting them to paid subscribers. So, COVID, I think, has actually helped a lot of different industries, and media is definitely one of them.
Yeah. Now, Hannah, a lot of small to mid-sized businesses failed in the past year to 18 months. I'm imagining that some of them would have been your clients. How or have your services helped them see where they're going, and maybe not?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been a mixture. I think Rose talking about pivoting, it always puts me in mind of Ross and Rachel trying to get the sofa up the stairs and Friends, you're just shouting at yourself, pivot. But for us, it was about SME survival. So on the one hand, we've got one channel of SMEs who come to us direct. On the other hand, we've got accountants who are just being overwhelmed with new compliance legislation that's coming in overnight, literally, as the government was trying to work out what to do next. In Australia, exactly the same thing was happening, and we are global, but those would be our two core markets. And so what we've seen is that on the accounting side of things, there's kind of accountants they're fatigued, like they're tired, they're dealing with furlough, all of the new things that came in, their compliance work went through the roof. So for us to pivot into SME survival and really going about how can we help small businesses access capital for those that need it, with the bounce backs, the CBIL loans that were there. What can we do with our product to make sure that it's as frictionless as possible? We partnered with Swoop Finance to help people access finance better in a responsible way. The last thing we want to do is push product down people's throats, but understanding affordability, doing that in a responsible manner, making sure that things like HMRC time to pay arrangements are factored into their forecast so they're not getting bitten at the same time when capital repayments have to kick in too. So, but kind of looking back, that's then paved the way for this next kind of phase of our business and iteration of our business, moving into the enterprise space, because we've proven we can do it. We've proven that we've got forecasts that do secure funding, particularly on the higher end. The lower end of the market, a lot of it is self-cert, but if you need to go for a larger amount and it's going to an underwriting team, they're going to want to see historicals, management information, and a full integrated three-way forecast, which we can provide. So it's almost been live product R&D, building the ship as we've been the engines of the rocket as you're going into space. But it's been, so on the one hand, economically it probably did hit us on the accounting side of things, but actually that's picking back up again. They're looking out towards their SMEs and looking to help them with growth, which is great to see, rather than purely focusing on survival mode. So it's cyclical, I guess, and the learnings have been great and full.
Great. Yes, I'm glad to hear that it's ultimately positive.
Yeah, it is.
so many concerns about SMEs at this time.
And there were so many SMEs started in the pandemic as well. I mean, this is,
True.
you know, in any period of recession, you get this burst of creativity happens. And so, you know, if we can help stabilize that and grow them, then, you know, that's the mission.
Yeah, well, and certainly a lot of people who've decided that the corporate life is not for them.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Time to go out. Maybe some people on this call, I don't know. So let's talk about decisions. Best and worst decisions. Anybody like to start on that one? Rose, can I call on you?
Yeah, I think something just more, I'll give you two. So one for the company and just one that was more general. I think that, you know, when a company raises finance and you get a lot of people coming out of the woodworks, just pitching you and wanting to work with you, it's actually quite overwhelming. And as you are, you know, growing a business and building it out, and you have this funding and people find out about it, you get inundated with really intelligent people from all over, and you kind of are at this point where you know you need to increase your team, and yet you have these amazing people. And I think some of the mistakes that I've made is moving on agencies or people very quickly before really understanding my strategy and my KPIs that I wanted to hit, because it's just like you want to just press go because you've been waiting for so long. But what I've learned from that is that when you do make a mistake, you deal with it immediately. You don't kind of put it on the back burner and wait and just eat through your cash. You notice it, you recognize it, and within 90 days, it's important to just deal with it. And so it's an expensive lesson to learn, but it's one that, you know, I've learned. And another mistake, I think, is out of control growth and really trying to manage people's expectations. And, you know, it's something that, you know, I would always say, well, that's a good problem to have. But actually, when you're getting hit in every single way, and customers and clients are expecting certain things and you can't deliver those things, and you have a team of people that are just so backlogged, it's important to really manage those expectations and to say no to great opportunities so you can be successful on the ones that you do have. So I think that's really important. And just on a small thing that I noticed, you know, when making decisions about just our launch in certain markets and which markets we launch into, which products do we launch with first, you know, sometimes we always want to go for the easiest one, which is, let's just get this out there, let's do that. And I think the biggest thing is actually taking a step back and really realizing when you're going to market, what is going to be your most impactful, the most powerful for the customer, not necessarily for internally, but for the customer that's going to have the best reach and best impact. And that's something that I've also had to learn. So lots of things. And I think successful is believing, you know, because I've always believed in my product, and because we've always done everything in-house, and, you know, we continue to push that. I think that by believing in that product, some large companies also do, and that's become the success. There'll be an announcement in a few weeks, but, you know, it's a major game changer that's happened for the company.
So Zarja, best and worst?
Best and worst, yeah. So I echo Rose there for sort of worst, at least in terms of like topic. Hiring. I've made some really poor decisions hiring people. And initially, I didn't learn as quickly as Rose suggested that it's important to then cut your losses quickly. And sticking with people that are not right for your company at that stage is the worst mistake you can make. But we're all humans, and you know it's hard. It's hard to let people go. But I've learned that it's important for the company and for everyone else, every other human in the company, to let go of people that are not right and quickly. I probably still have a lot to learn in that area, and especially how to hire better. But I think, yeah, I have a couple of worst decisions in that category. In terms of best decisions, I think early on, I got a lot of advice around don't raise too much money. And I didn't quite understand what people meant at that time. Like, why would there be anything wrong with too much money? Like, money is good. Money allows you to invest, to spend, to develop, to grow. But I've learned, luckily not through a mistake, or at least not my own, that really is not good to raise too much. Raise only as little as you actually need at any given stage. Only really as much as you need to get to the next milestone, the next goal, and make it small but meaningful, as opposed to going out big and kind of carrying that around like a big badge of, oh, I raised millions, because that's not value creation. Rather reverse it. Think about how you create more value with less money. And I've seen it with some of our competitors. They've over-raised and they're facing different challenges, because once you raise a lot of money from VCs, they have their own agenda. And oftentimes that agenda is not exactly the right agenda for the business.
In fact, I was giving that advice to an investee just last week, Zarja.
And many years ago, so not that many years ago, so a few years ago.
Yes, it is one of my favorite pieces of advice to give. Hannah, what were you going to say?
I was gonna completely echo. I mean, honestly, I'm, just nodding at what you're both saying massively. I think the VC thing is huge, right? I think first of all, you are walking into a room full of unconscious bias or conscious bias, depending on who you're pitching to. But there's something about building a real business and holding on to as much equity as you possibly can. It's your business, don't give it away because of the vanity raise. And also, profitability is a thing, right? Yeah. I think when I started out, it was like, oh, quick, just raise. It's fine. Just how much cash have you got? When's your burnout? It's like, or we build a sustainable business that then is in the position to raise money as and when we need to. So we did a formal raise in 2018 after we became profitable, because I wanted to know that this was a real business, and equally have some of the power at the table to go, you've invested in someone who knows what they're doing. I might not be from Y Combinator or I might have come from a bloody pub in Devon, but I've learned how to create a business. But what I would say about the hiring thing on the VC side too, you will be told you need this position and this position and this position and a VP of this and a da-da-da of that. Do you know what I did? And I made massive mistakes, and we grew so quickly. And of course, when you do that, you're burning through your cash. But again, it changed our business. It changed the DNA of our business temporarily, happily, and we are back to it feeling like mine again. But it's something that I would really warn anybody about, that particularly that VP layer or the next layer down, you've got your chief team, and that next layer, they can make or break your business, because there's a lens that your messaging goes through them to the people below. And if you haven't managed to get that kind of wafer thin, that lens can, it can be like a prism going off in different angles. So just be super, super careful. You know your business. Your gut instinct is probably right about when you need to hire and who those people are, and then be rigorous. One of our VCs is brilliant. He's like, just when you're hiring, try and hire someone who's done the next phase that you haven't done yet, and have that one key hire who has walked that path, because that will fast forward you to the next phase. Or bring in some non-execs who've done it, just so you're not necessarily needing to put somebody on the payroll, but you've got some sage advice. So for our enterprise piece now, that's what I've done instead of going, right, we're hiring in, I'm like, actually, no, let's look outward and see who's interested in giving some advice for free at the moment, and so there's different ways to skin a cat, but hold on to your cash is what I would say, and then trust that gut.
Yep. Well, I would agree with that.
And always have a full wine fridge. That would be one other piece of advice.
Yes, I think that's very good advice as well. And I think some of your comments are actually a good segue into the question that I have about whether you think women entrepreneurs are different from male entrepreneurs, whether your experiences you think have been different because you are women entrepreneurs, and also Rose, because you are a woman of color. So who'd like to start on this one?
Go, Rose.
I will go, just because I think my computer's dying, so I
will
go in a minute. So I will answer it first. I think Yes, I mean, yes, obviously it's different. I mean, if you go back 200-300 years, all women, no matter their color, were basically owned by their husbands. So, men controlled their money, men controlled what they could do, women couldn't vote, women couldn't do anything. So, women, regardless of their skin tone, have come a long way for their independence and their freedom. Now, with that, it's, we're still kind of, moving into a world where men dominated it for a very long time up until recently. And so, of course, they don't want to let go of that position because they had a very powerful position for a very long time. But, and I work with a lot of men, but I really try to focus on my own path and my own journey, because I think we can spend all day long comparing ourselves to our counterparts or to other people, or why do they have this and I don't have that. And it's brain power that could be going into, how do I secure this deal or not secure this deal? And I've learned the best way around it is just to have the best product, better than anybody's out there on the market, and for less, and to really push that. Because what I have noticed is, regardless of who's at the helm, if the product is amazing, people are going to want to work with you. And, we are at a, as I said earlier, timing's everything. And we are at a time where people are being very politically correct, and, they can't be so blatant about not working with the company because it's run by a woman. They can lose their jobs for that. So they can lose their jobs for even looking below the neckline. So, it's knowing that and being really strong and pushing forward now, because now is a very strong moment for women. And I think that a lot of people constantly hear, you can't do this, you can't do this. And, it's only 1% or 2% or less. But I think that could be very disheartening for women that hear that. And I think it's really important to, always talk about the positives. And, the positives for me is, I have a really great law firm, and they've told me how to hold on to my shareholding. Because I wasn't able to raise VC money early on, I was really forced to make my company profitable before having that VC money, which put me in an extremely powerful position to either take it or not take it. And, and being advised, to get more votes per share, because, shareholders are not going to be happy if the founder shares don't dilute, right? But just because you're diluting doesn't mean that you can't, have those votes per share, so you can still maintain that control of your company. I mean, if you're going to really suffer for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, you have the right to manage that company until the end, or until you don't want to anymore, and not be pushed out because you have people above you kind of telling you what to do. And there's no better place than your own company to be as strong as you want. So it's my experience.
I just want to say, I love the fact that you just said, if you're going to suffer for 5, 10, 15 years, we're really selling the dream here. Amazing. That is amazing.
No sugarcoating here, no sugarcoating here, but it is worth the fight, because you know what? I can have my kids on a call with a major Fortune 100 company and still close the deal. And it feels great that I don't have to hide all of my wonderfulness, which is my extension of my family, to do a deal, because I can still do a deal even with the baby on my hip.
Quite right. I mean, I would completely, I think at the beginning, I talked about unconscious bias and walking into the VC room the first time that you're pitching. I think you're putting that on yourself a lot of the time. Well, I know that I was putting it onto myself. I know now, I'm so kind of old. I feel just old. I've gone around the block so many times. There's just Hannah Dawson walking into the room, not Hannah Dawson the woman, or Hannah Dawson the mother, or Hannah Dawson the entrepreneur. I'm just me. Take me as you find me. I'll probably swear too much. It's just, but that's, I think when you have suffered or been around the block, the 7-8 years that we've been doing it now, just bring it. I don't care who you are, I can hold my own with you in any room, and any prospective entrepreneur, just believe in yourself. If you've got to the point where you've got a business that's working and your metrics are working, that back yourself. I'd almost like to remove just gender from the whole conversation, frankly, because that then does us a disservice. That's how, I don't know how to express it any better than that.
Yeah, look, I think I very much agree with the fact that it's better to just take the gender out of the equation and out of your head.
Right.
Unfortunately, the statistics are where they are. Women get far, far, far less funding than men. but that doesn't mean that we're all doomed. And I think it's probably not healthy to dwell on those statistics, because that creates a lot of subconscious bias and imposter syndrome and all these things in women's heads, which then in turn impacts their performance. So I had quite a unique bringing up. I was a professional skier, and my team was 9 boys and me. Wow. And oftentimes I was better than them. So the way I grew up was, it didn't really, the gender didn't really matter to me from early on, but I appreciated not everyone grew up that way. But that's kind of my mentality when I go into meetings, either that's for fundraising or for sales or for anything. It's just, gender doesn't quite exist. And if it does exist, I can probably do it better anyway.
Right.
So I think it's just important to, like Rose and Hannah has said, believe in your product, believe in yourself, and gender is not really going to play any role.
And when you think about it, like when the war happened, World War II, and all the women had to take care of the country and the farms and the houses and the jobs and did all the work that the men did, the country was fine. And the children were being raised at the same time. So, I mean, and these were women that probably didn't even have as much education level or training level or expertise as we do today, because there's more opportunities available for us if we choose to go down that route. Back then, women didn't have much to do unless they wanted to knit and do other things and just take care of our household. But we rose to the challenge with very little training. So that says a lot about our abilities. And
I mean,
lives.
I think knitting and sitting around sounds wonderful, right?
Yes.
We've covered off that last piece. I'm sure that we have some questions out in our audience for our entrepreneurs today. Does anybody want to take themselves off mute and perhaps put on the videos again and ask a question of our illustrious panel?
Shall I kick off, Yasmin? Hi guys, it's Annette. I was wanting to ask Hannah whether there were any particular industry sectors that she finds are more susceptible to the product that she's selling to them, as a first question, and then ask a little bit about sales forecasting, particularly for smaller organizations where I mean, you've all had to do it, and I'm just sort of wondering how you advise the smaller companies on that particular aspect, because I think it's one of the most difficult aspects for small companies, is trying to predict with any degree of accuracy how your sales are going to be for next year. So those are sort of two things that immediately occurred to me when I was listening to you.
Sure, I'll take that. So on the industry side of things, it's really broad. The majority, I would say that there's a degree of tech literacy actually is the first thing that, of course, will guide us to the right SME. Professional services, all of the kind of creative digital industries, retail, hospitality. In Australia, we have a lot of mining companies. So it kind of depends on the locale, really. But on the sales side of things, there's not an art to forecasting, I don't think. I think it's kind of down to what both of the panel have been saying beforehand. It's about knowing your business. So what we do is we'll take transaction data. We take 2 years worth of historicals to project forwards, and then we explain one of the big reasons that we were so late in bringing our product out was that it was really important to me that we explained where a number had come from and the full rationale behind it and the logic from where it had come from. So that there's this constant iterative educational process within the app, and we're kind of giving feedback equally. If a prediction's not right, they can turn it off and create their own. And to help them create their own, we have different methods and methodologies. So, if you're selling subscriptions or services or products, there's a units, we've got a method for you to do that in a much more robust, straightforward manner. I guess the biggest thing is understanding the impacts that any prediction has, any forecast assumption has. And I think that one of the biggest things that was important to me and that we get feedback from with the product is the fact that we show how that movement works all the way through, because you may well, you know, forecast £1,000 worth of sales, but if it's not getting paid for 45 days and you're paying your suppliers in 20, you're going to run out of cash. So it's the relationship piece. And I think the more that we help on the financial literacy side of things and explaining if this then that, then that's when we get light bulb moments. Now, the majority of our SMEs that are using our new product are pretty financially literate. You know, they'll have, but usually there's a break point of at least 10 employees, and we group our SMEs by employee size, because that's usually dictates the complexity within the business, not necessarily the revenue side of things. And they're often owner managers who are wearing multiple hats. So it's typically before they've got an in-house finance team. They might have a bookkeeper, they might have an accountant, often not a very good one. And so, you know, it's down to us to try and educate as we kind of click them through so that they've got their short-term, medium and long-term cash flow is accurately forecast. One thing that we are going to be doing after we've nailed this enterprise piece that we're doing at the moment is to bring in sales and software integrations, so that if you've got a sales team, then pipeline forecasting will be in, and then we can lead them into, well, how does that actually look across your whole business then, so that we can again bring that education piece back. Because unfortunately, like I said beforehand, so many small businesses are running on a sales forecast or very, very rudimentary cash flow. You know, I'm getting paid this invoice and that invoice, but it's not calculating their tax. It's not creating full three-way movements through the P&L, balance sheet and cash flow. And so suddenly they're like, well, we've made profit, where's my money gone? Well, you know, so we're taking them down that path. At the moment, however, our user base are pretty sophisticated. So, you know, we are replacing an Excel function, saving them time and giving them kind of live monitoring, kind of like a Maps app for their business.
Yeah, it's a really interesting idea, I think, because I think you're quite right. A lot of SMEs are just quite naive when it comes to the way.
No one shows them what good is first, and then, you know, there's no foundation from which, you know, if I could change things, I would say you have to have a cloud accounting package. Your second thing is a forecasting app, then you get other things, because you can't make decisions looking through the rearview, you know, window. So, but we're not there yet. We're, you know, we've got a big old path to tread.
Making progress. Very good, fantastic. Yeah, that's interesting.
Are there other questions for our panelists? I still have a few, but happy to cede the floor to others for the time being. Well, then I'm going to ask my final question, and then if people would like to hang around and chat afterwards, since we said we'd wrap the panel by 7:15.
Okay.
So my final question is simply, what advice do you have for other women entrepreneurs? Any sort of advice of any kind? We've had a lot of advice so far this evening, of course, about various things: fundraising, money management, dealing with employment, etc. But what key piece of advice would you like to pass on to others? Who'd like to start?
I can go, Audrey.
Okay.
So one of the advice that I've received, or I've kind of made it an advice for myself every day, is about failing. And it's about failing fast and not being afraid to fail. A lot of us are perfectionists. A lot of us want to do things right. But in entrepreneurship, you have to move fast too. And so if you're waiting for your product to be perfect, or for your pitch to be perfect, or for your presentation to be perfect, or anything else, you're never going to move fast enough. And you're also not going to learn. And the reality is that whatever you do in entrepreneurship, you're not going to get it right for the first time. So the only way to progress is to learn. The best and the fastest way to learn is to allow yourself to fail. And so that mantra from Silicon Valley, fail fast, is very much resonating in my head all the time. So I'll encourage everyone to try to think about how you can fail in order to learn, and how you can make yourself more comfortable with failing. I always say that my internal barometer is if I don't feel at least a little bit uncomfortable by putting something forward, I'm too late.
Interesting.
Some sort of discomfort in order to move forward fast enough.
Okay. And Rose, I see that you've come off mute. So would you like to give your advice?
Yeah, I think, I think it's important to, always just be grateful of like the small steps. And I think we always are looking for like the big steps and the big wins. And I think sometimes things happen where they don't end up the way that we expected them to, and we get disappointed. But when you really kind of look at where you started and where you've gone to, I mean, it's really important to acknowledge that growth. Even if it doesn't equate to maybe a monetization aspect, or if you don't reach like wherever you're trying to get to, but every little step is important and it will build a great company one day.
Hannah, if we could have your advice for other women entrepreneurs.
I think we touched on it before, but there's a massive thing about imposter syndrome, and it's just such a waste of energy. So just slap yourself in the face and look in the mirror if you need to, like, and sometimes you do. Sometimes you need to just give yourself a shake to say that you can do it. I have to say, Rose, I have gone and hidden with a glass of wine for, half an hour, but then you go, right, okay, game time. And you have to just believe in yourself, because other people have joined your company to work for you, probably for you and your mission and whatever you've built. So just believe in it. Don't waste, you've got enough to waste your emotions on. Imposter syndrome is not one of them.
Great. That is good. Thank you very much. Thank you all. So I'd like to ask everyone to join me in thanking our panel.